Hello and welcome to Theory into Practice. I am Dan Scott, and today is a fantastic day. I have a great guest today. Dr. Andrea Adams is someone that I met a few years ago when we started working on the FEMA Special Interest Group Ethics Committee together. And I quickly realized how fantastic Andrea is in everything that she does. She's taken on so many different leadership roles that it's kind of hard to count, but it's more impressive in the way that she's organized the way we do things. But very importantly to know is that Dr. Adams is an assistant professor at the University of District Columbia, and her research focus is on data privacy, gender-based violence, and emergency management ethics, which is what we're going to talk about today, quite a bit on ethics. And then Andrea teaches in the Criminal Justice Bachelors, Homeland Security Master's program, which I'll give her an opportunity to talk about and plug that at the end as well for those who may be interested in taking a look at that. And she maps gender-based violence. Andrea is currently the Curriculum Chairperson for FEMA's Higher Education Ethics Special Interest Group, and is currently working on the group's Ethic in Action supplement, which we're going to talk about in this segment. And I am so excited to have you, Andrea, on the show. It's been a while since we've had a chance to connect, and this allows that to happen. So I appreciate you coming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much, Dan. It's great to see you again and have an opportunity to talk about all these important issues.
Yeah, and these issues are very important, and they're very relevant especially in today's climate. Ultimately, what I wanted to give you the chance to share is what is it that you experienced when you worked on this program, and what are you continuing to find as we continue to forward our initiative?
So one of the things that's real exciting about where we're at is that, and we're going to talk about this later, but I'll plug it now. We have developed standards, professional standards for emergency management. And those standards have been vetted, and we've presented them, and we've talked about them. And we know as professionals that it takes a lot for people to really understand and then be able to adopt ethical practice, even though, sometimes we think of it as being intuitive. We think, oh yeah, I'll know what to do. But what's so exciting about understanding how to teach ethics is that I have found that we think about ethics from the perspective of, oh, I'll know what to do, when in fact, ethics is always a choice between two bad alternatives. So you're always going to make a decision that is going to have an impact that you don't necessarily want to do. And so when I'm teaching ethics at the University of the District of Columbia, I teach undergraduates and graduates, and I'm teaching them about how to adopt this professional stance, attitude, perspective, decision-making that allows you to be able to sort through and unearth the priorities connected to making a decision between two bad alternatives. And that really is what professionals do. And one of the things, as you know, Dan, we are putting these standards in place because professional organizations and professional disciplines can police themselves, and they do that through these ethical standards. And so that's kind of what I'm about with respect to both ethics and practice. And then our curriculum committee is going to focus on ethics in action, and we'll talk about that later.
Well, I think what's important too, especially as it relates to any leadership in general, but when emergency management, is that decisions that we make can affect people's lives, and it can affect their livelihoods, and it can affect the environment. It can affect so many different things, the decisions that we make, and a lot of that can be based on the situation that's right in front of us. So it could be making a decision between one bad thing or another bad thing. What's the greater bad thing? And whatever that, as big as that may blow our thinking in the moment, we have to make those decisions, and sometimes it affects people in a negative light. So when it comes to these ethical standards, how do we expect that they will help us to alleviate some of those ultimately alleviate some of the decision-making process that could affect so many people negatively?
Well, so what we were thinking when we were developing the standards was that we wanted to set the bar at the level that we want people to aspire to. Even though the standards are not necessarily aspirational, what they do is they set the bar. And so then if you know what the bar is, for example, professionals recognize diversity needs in every community that they're involved in. That's the standard, but how do you do that? And so we knew that if we set a bar, that there was going to have to be lots of discussions about how do you meet that bar? How do you think through that? And so one of the things I love about both professionalism and leadership, because I teach ethics and leadership as well, is that the notion of leadership really becomes someone being able to understand what the stakeholder needs are, understand where the pain points are, understand what the societal priorities are. And so when you take those things and you weave those into your decision-making process, you know you're going to have to make some tough decisions, but you're going to make those based upon your understanding of the landscape, and then your ability to say from an ethical perspective, which one of these things takes priority.
So let me ask this question, because that's thinking big picture, right? So let's think about the day-to-day practice of an emergency manager, Homeland Security professional, just in general, everyday professional in any standard. There's an application of ethics that we could ultimately apply proactively that would have make those decisions in a large scale incident or a large scale decision making process that much easier at the application of ethics, correct?
Mm-hmm. And it's really about thinking ethically. It's really about that being a lens that you look at through everything. And so when I will talk about some examples, but when there is a decision about whether you're going to use data and you're not sure that the data is coming from a reliable source or those kind of things, if you think ethically about that, then you ask a whole lot more questions before you make the decision. If you think ethically about it and you still need to use the data from an unknown source, then you think more about how do you protect while you're having to use the data. So it's this lens that we're talking about, people making their decisions through viewing what the problems are through this ethical lens. And the standards are what gives you the kind of lens that you need to look through. And it becomes a practice. It's really not a rule that somebody says and you follow. It's something you have to practice, and you practice it all the time.
I like the way you put that and you phrase that, because that's one of the things that I teach when it comes to leadership. You have to practice it all the time. It's a consistent, intentional, purposeful thing that you do, and doing it through if you do that, the application of emergency management or leadership with intention and with purpose, but through the lens of ethical decision making, the decisions we make every day can just have that much more impact on the people that we are intent to serve. So when you let me just ask this: when you teach your classes on the beginning of the ethical mindset, how do you approach that?
Well, so ethics is kind of the end of the road. Ethics begins with beliefs and values and morals. And so everybody has some level of belief system, and it's based upon, who their parents, their environment. Everybody has this set of belief systems that lead them to develop some values. What do they value? And so I began to ask people, what do they value? This is what makes up the lens that we're talking about, because it's their beliefs, it's their values. And then this notion of morality is, what have we agreed on? societally are the most important things. And then we get to ethics, which is, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to value it. And so if you're going through that process, what people find out when they're learning is that their values are different from other people. They find out that their beliefs are based upon things that are different from other people. And then when you get to morality, what's exciting about getting there is that you take those values and beliefs, and now you have to come up with this morality that we all kind of aspire to. Now, do people have different morals? Absolutely. Do societies have different morals? Absolutely. Do morals change over time? Absolutely. And so it's this evolution that we have to go through so that at the end of the day, not only are we making this decision from an ethical perspective, but we know what it's based upon. Sometimes we value life more than we value the environment. And if we know that, when it comes down to making that ethical decision about whether to do this or that, we already know we value life more than we value the environment. But what if the environment means that it's going to destroy life? Then you have, so it's understanding that progression that really helps people know what kind of decisions to make and know what those decisions are based upon.
I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned, and I think it's very valuable as far as change, because ultimately we see that people's morals, their values, their beliefs, they're just the way they view life. It can change. It can change involuntarily, and it can change voluntarily. Obviously, we want that change to come in a voluntary manner, but ultimately, how do we go about basically escaping that starting that conversation with people in order to really come to understand that our morals and our ethics and our values can change, and change for the more positive in the matter. You see that sometimes they can change for the negative. I mean, when you look at terrorism and stuff like that, and their values and their morals and stuff like that, that changes, their mindset changes. So how do we go about increasing that change for the more positive manner?
It's really simple, simple and hard. It's really conversations. It's understanding each other, understanding what is driving people's belief system, such that they hold different values for different things. We're having this discussion in this country about the value of being able to possess a gun and use a gun and own a gun. And there are so many different belief systems attached to that value. And then so much morality that's attached to that. And so we're actually talking across purpose with each other. I'm talking about it from this lens, and you're talking about it from a different lens. And we both may be right. But if we don't have that communication to understand what is that underlying value, so we can address that as opposed to addressing the decision, which is, that's like treating the symptom and not treating the disease. and those conversations are important. And that's why ethics training is so valuable. It's not the rules that we've come up with. It's the conversations we get to have about what should we do. I don't know if I guess it's, I don't know if maybe it's Apple TV. There's a movie coming out about what happened in New Orleans at Memorial Hospital. And it's 5 days at Memorial. It's based upon a book that we used to read from one of my ethics classes. And they were faced with some terrible, terrible choices at the hospital. There's people dying. Do they euthanize them, or do they just let them die? They ran out of pain medicine. They ran out. And so in those situations, we cannot judge morality in that situation. We have to continue to have the conversations about what should we be doing in that environment. And then we have to make sure that we understand that some of these things we're talking about can't be done in emergency situations. You know, sometimes you don't have the ability to do that. And so all that has to be about the conversations we have to discuss it and agree.
Well, and that's a great point, because in emergency situations or really disaster situations, some decisions have to be made, and they mean no decision made is going to be good for somebody. But
Mhm.
you touched on something that I really want to touch on before we round out the show, is the conversation aspect of things. And being willing to have the conversation is one thing, but having an open mind enough to accept another person's beliefs is really huge. And you bring up gun control, or gun, the not necessarily control, but the belief of whether or not someone should have a firearm or not have a firearm. But I also want to bring that to your back around about with race or
Mhm.
politics. I mean, right now it's so much of, if you're Republican, I don't like you. If you're Democrat, I don't like you. If you're Black, I don't like you. If you're white, I don't like you. If you wear a uniform, I don't like you. So it's like, it's one or the other. How do we approach these conversations, these discussions with so much, to be able to understand and embrace the other side's view on things?
So, you know, a lot of what we're doing, and this is just my opinion, a lot of what we're doing is we're talking across each other as if we are not, it's like I'm talking to you like I know what your experiences are, like I know enough about you to even make a decision about who you are. And so I believe that I can only make a decision about who somebody is if I have engaged them, discussed with them, get to know them. 9 times out of 10, if you meet somebody and you get to know them, you're not going to have any impression about whether they're a label or not. I am not just African American. That's just one tiny dimension of who I am. And so if you categorize me just based upon that, then you miss out on the total amount that of my experience and what I've done, and you miss that. And that's what we're doing. I tell people a lot about how, the brain wants to categorize stuff to make it easy for it to do what it needs to do. It says, oh, that's a car. Oh, that, and it doesn't really give you all the details to it. And so that's what we're doing. We're trying to reduce the amount of information we take in by labeling somebody so we can move on. And that's not the work of humans. Humans are made for relationship. And that's why we're struggling. My opinion is that we're not getting to know anything beyond what we see on the outside or what somebody tells us we need to decide about that. And it's on all of us to get to know one another and to build a relationship. And then if I don't like you after I've gotten to know you, that's okay too. I can say, okay, I'm moving on,
We
but
don't
it's
have to
not
be
based.
friends. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. But that doesn't mean I have to hate you either, so.
no, but I'm moving on because there's other people who I'm more like, and I can have relationship with them. But I don't categorize you, and I don't make assumptions about who you are based upon what I see. And even what I see isn't the whole thing anyway. So, I mean, we're getting to the point now, and maybe it's because of information overload, that we're not taking the time to really have community and have relationship. That's important in emergency management too. If you're an emergency manager and you know the community and you know the members of the community, you're going to have a much easier time getting people to respond to your commands and making sure that they do what they're supposed to do and getting them to assist you in doing what you need to do. If you stand on the rooftop and say, everybody leave, what if you can't leave? And so what we're talking about, leadership, is about understanding and having relationships with people who are supporting you as leader.
That's amazing. I appreciate that thought so much. And that just goes back to doing so with intention and purpose. I mean, if you intentionally do what you need to do and spend the time doing what you need to do, and you do that with purpose, and you have that purpose in mind when you're doing it, things can ultimately work out so much better for all of us. And it's just spending that time to really get to know or to understand the situations in which you could be faced. But that conversation, we can actually go in a little bit more into the leadership segment of the show. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about the program that you teach in, and how people can go and find that, or find you to make contact and go further with that. So I'm going to give you that opportunity now.
So I am an assistant professor at the University of the District of Columbia, and our university has a justice and security program. And what's great about the program is that it is a program where students really learn foundational information about criminal justice, but not just the area of criminal justice, a wide range of areas. I teach criminal profiling. I teach, of course, ethics and public service. Then our master's in Homeland Security is connected with the Department of Homeland Security, and we do a lot of programs through them. And so a lot of our students that go through that program go right into jobs and positions within Homeland Security, because we have so many great connections. And so I'm Andrea Adams at udc.edu, and anybody's welcome to reach out to me.
And I will have a link for the program and all that in the show notes as well, for those of you who may be driving down the road and not able to access that right now. So there will be information there for you to reach out to Andrea as well, and to be able to explore the program a little bit if you're interested. Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It's always great to hear from you. I look forward to our conversation on leadership, which is coming up shortly. For all those who are listening and watching, if you enjoyed what you hear, you found content what you hear, please like, comment, share, reach out to me with ideas, reach out to me with comments on how we can better serve you in what we do. This was Theory into Practice. I'm Dan Scott, and I will talk to you next time.